One autumn evening, Tom Hanks was returning from a charity event in Los Angeles. As he gazed out of his car window, he noticed an elderly man sitting on a bench. The man's face bore the marks of time and hardship. His worn-out coat and the tattered suitcase beside him were clear signs that he was homeless. His eyes stared blankly into the distance, as if he were reliving the life he had lost. Tom couldn't just drive by. He asked his driver to stop the car and stepped out, slowly approaching the man. "Hello, sir. Are you all right?" he asked gently. The man lifted his head, his eyes brimming with tears. "My name is George," he said. "I used to have a home in this city, a family, but now I've lost everything. My house was taken away because of debts, and now this bench is my home." Tom was deeply moved by George's words. "No one deserves to live like this," he said with compassion. "Please, would you share your story with me? Maybe there's something I can do to help." Touched by Tom's sincerity, George hesitated for a moment before beginning to tell his story. George was 75 years old, a man who had spent his entire life as an honest and hardworking carpenter. The furniture he crafted with his own hands had adorned countless homes over the years. He had lived a happy life with his wife Margaret and their 2 children, never imagining that everything he cherished could one day be taken away. But life, as it often does, revealed its cruel side without hesitation. "Margaret, she was the light of my life," George said, his voice trembling as he took a deep breath. "But cancer, we couldn't fight it. The medical bills consumed everything we had. I mortgaged our house because there was no other way. But even that wasn't enough. I lost her anyway." His eyes welled up, and his voice cracked with emotion. "After she was gone, my children drifted away. They built their own lives, and I didn't want to be a burden. So I never thought to ask." Since that day, George had been living on the streets. He slept on cold benches at night and barely survived on spare change during the day. As he described how people ignored him, his voice grew quieter. "Most wouldn't even look at me," he said. "Some would pass by with disdain. I felt invisible, but I'm still a person. I once had a family, a home." Tom couldn't hold back his tears as he listened to George's heartbreaking story. His voice was firm, yet filled with emotion as he spoke. "George, no one deserves a life like this. I will do everything in my power to get you out of this situation," he said with conviction. George stared at Tom in disbelief, his eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and doubt. "But why?" he asked, his voice shaky and filled with confusion. "You don't even know me. Why would you go to such lengths for someone like me?" Taking a deep breath, Tom held George's hands and said, "I don't need to know you, George. This is about humanity. If we don't do what we can to help others when they're at their lowest, who are we? Being human means helping those who are most vulnerable." Tom immediately sprang into action. He took George out for a warm meal and arranged a hotel room for him. For the first time in years, George slept in a real bed. "This feels like a dream," George said, tears streaming down his face. Seeing this, Tom decided to go one step further. He shared George's story on his social media accounts and launched a fundraiser to help him. In no time, thousands of people rallied to support George. Some donated money, while others offered him job opportunities. Tom was deeply moved by the outpouring of support. "If we can come together to help George, it won't just be his victory, it will be all of ours," he said. Within weeks, a new home was found for George. Tom personally handed over the keys to George's new house. With trembling hands, George accepted the keys and hugged Tom tightly. "This is something I could never have dreamed of. You've given me my life back," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Tom smiled warmly and replied, "This is your right, George. You are an integral part of our community, and we must never forget that." As George settled into his new home, the neighborhood welcomed him with open arms. His neighbors organized a housewarming party, and for the first time in years, George felt like he belonged to a community again. A month later, George had fully embraced his new life. When Tom visited him, he found George tending to flowers in his garden. "These flowers are a symbol of my new beginning," George said with a smile. Tom felt immense pride seeing the transformation in George's life. This story didn't just change George's life, it inspired countless others. Moved by the experience, Tom started a support program for elderly individuals in need. "We will all grow old one day," Tom said during a television interview. "If we don't help them now, who will we rely on in the future?" This heartfelt story became an unforgettable lesson for everyone who heard it. It showed how even a single act of kindness could completely transform a life. If this touching story moved you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Every like and subscription helps us shine a light on more lives in need. Let's work together to create more stories of hope and change.